They tell me on Facebook that the world is ending soon, so I thought I would learn how to cook broths and elixirs. Like to hear it? Here it go. Goodbye.
Hi guys, stoked to have you here. We're just waiting a few more seconds to get as many people in here as possible. So let's just say 5 or 10 seconds and we'll get started.
5,
Like we
10.
should be playing some theme music or Jeopardy music, but I don't have any. So a few
5,
more seconds.
10.
Okay, let's dive in.
Which one?
Welcome everyone to our special online webinar called Elixirs and Healing Broths 101. I'm Nick Palizzi, founder of The Sacred Science, and I'll be your host. It is a true honor to introduce you to master herbalist and medicine maker Mitten Lowe, a remarkable human and also a fellow Colorado local. If you are lucky enough to try one of Mitten's broths or elixirs, which we did during the filming of the Healing Kitchen docuseries, you will experience an almost supernatural feeling of wellness wash over you with each sip. While filming her in the kitchen, our crew fell in love with Mitten's powerful potions, and I asked her if she'd be willing to join me on this webinar to bestow some of her wisdom upon you all and to empower you to start making your own elixirs and healing broths at home. Mitten is a medicine woman, biologist, clinical herbalist, passionate community member, devoted mother, and loving partner. Teaching food as medicine, as well as healing herbs, has always been her passion, and this lifelong path started at a very young age. Mitten's craft is a reflection of her commitment to break through the unhealthy patterns and unwell connections that show up in our lives. These patterns often pull us away from true wellness and joy, preventing us from honoring the truth of who we are and what we need. Her work is a culmination and integration of decades of learning, education, training, and experiences that transformed into a healing path all its own. Long story short, Mitten is the real deal, and it's an honor for us to have her here. Here's what we'll be covering in this talk. We only have an hour today, so I'll do my best to get as much as I can from Mitten in that time. We'll start by exploring what a healing tonic, elixir, and broth actually are, and what makes each of these formulas such powerful natural medicines. Mitten and I will then discuss the most widely beneficial broth recipe she makes, as well as what her favorite broth ingredients are and why. Next, I'll ask Mitten about the elixir of immortality, and we'll dive into its origins and the ingredients it contains. Moving on, we'll explore how to make elixirs and broths on the cheap. Mitten has some great hacks that will allow you to fill your pantry and fridge with potions and food medicines on a tight budget. After this, we'll unpack the philosophy at the core of Mitten's approach, starting with her belief that proper mineral-rich nourishment is essential for the healthy functioning of our organ systems and overall wellness. We'll talk about the connection between an undernourished body and the feelings of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm that seem to be engulfing the world right now. Lastly, Mitten will share why it is important to target the health of the gut first, and then work outward from there to all other areas of the body. This is a vital healing secret that you're going to want to be all ears for. Then, at the end of the call, Mitten and I are going to share with everyone how you can take the next step through a powerful new course we're creating together. Very exciting. How are you, Mitten?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here, ready to talk about broths and elixirs with you. How are you?
Oh my gosh, I am ready to talk about broths and elixirs with you. We have been making so many broths and elixirs, mostly inspired by you. And I think that like half my family has you to thank for all of this delicious edible medicine in our house.
Oh, I'm so glad. Lots of broth making in families. That makes me very happy to hear. Us
I
too.
know. I mean, something that people might not know about you is that you make broths not only for yourself, but you make broths for your clients too. Like you're making broth on a regular basis. You're probably making broth somewhere right now, whether it's like broth or a kombucha elixir or something like that. You're making this medicine all the time.
I'm making this medicine all the time. That's true. I'm actually drinking broth right now that I made last night. And I do think at this point in my own medicine making, I'm making medicine all the time, which is really wonderful and exciting. And I'm still deepening, always growing.
It's a beautiful thing. I guess my first question for you is, how on earth did you find this unlikely path, and how did this path find you? Whichever one.
Of broth making?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, it's really funny because you don't necessarily grow up thinking that you're going to become a very serious and committed broth maker. And I think that this path really found me because the truth is with all healing, the things that we need find us. And so we have to discover whatever it is that we need to learn about our own healing or our family's healing. And a lot of parents learn that. But there was a time in the beginning where I had just begun making broth because I was really committed to helping my dad and my son, almost at exactly the same time, heal their teeth naturally, which of course everybody tells you you can't do. And so I started making bone broth. And my dad, I grew up vegetarian, who does not eat meat, I had to make him a vegan bone broth. So those were the beginnings of me making broth and making broth recipes. And from that place, well, first of all, both of them completely healed their teeth.
What?
Completely, yes. Never looked back. And that happened to my dad in his almost 70s, which is really amazing. Just to show our capacity to heal and how amazing broth is. I know, it's pretty miraculous. And neither one of them have had any tooth decay. But from that place, my dad, who has always been, my inspiration and my fellow gardener and my fellow cook, we began just making all of these amazing broth recipes. And together started to co-create broth recipes, broth gardens, drinking broth together, making broth for family, making broth for clients. So I think, the broth making medicine really found me.
That's crazy. I don't even want to, I don't want to get off the topic here, but that's nuts about the teeth. I mean, you hear that is something that you can't heal. I remember watching some videos that were from Eastern Europe and Russia where they were showing you that you actually could. And some people were even regrowing somehow old teeth that had fallen out. That is absolutely fascinating. But that speaks to, I think, part of what your philosophy is of just the importance of nourishment, the importance of, before you do anything dramatic to try to change something that doesn't feel good, check to see if you are getting properly nourished on every level. Yeah,
I think as a foundation for healing, so many times we skip those core root basic needs of the human biology and physiology, which is we need nourishment to repair. We need nourishment to make hormones, to detox properly, to have reproductive health. We need nourishment to be able to function well. We need nourishment to be able to be happy and not to feel depressed and anxious. We need nourishment on all levels to be the best version of ourselves. So that piece, we love to skip over it and look for some sort of a magic bullet or something other than just going back to our remembered ways of what does it mean to actually get in lots of vitamins and minerals and plants and broths and eat consistently and not skip meals and all of those basics. We've lost that in this culture, unfortunately.
Yeah, don't get me started on this culture. The culture of convenience. I think that I am starting to feel like I'm seeing signs that there's a big mass shift about to happen or happening, where people are really starting to tune into this and get excited about the holistic side of things, as opposed to the quick fix, which I think is how we were raised. We're a culture of the quick fix and just rub a little dirt on it and get back to work, or just be tough and keep moving forward and don't tune into yourself, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So before we get into specific broths or specific elixirs and different kinds of formulas, can you describe for those of us who don't know, which actually includes me to some degree, what the difference is between an elixir, a tonic, and a broth? Or is there a lot of crossover there?
Yes, both are true. There's a lot of crossover and there are differences. And even within the herbal community or the wellness community, there are different definitions. So for our purposes, and when I teach tonics and broths and elixirs, we think of an elixir as an herbal preparation. Anytime, it could be a lot of different things, like an oxymel with apple cider vinegar, or a tincture with alcohol, or even a yummy treat with cacao. But we sweeten that herbal preparation with something like honey or dates or maple syrup. And one of the most wonderful things about elixirs is we get in that yummy plant medicine, but the taste helps us come back over and over again. Because if we're not taking the herbs that we need, we're not often able to fully continue the healing. So usually with an herb, one dose is not going to help us support a long-term healing process. Elixirs are amazing in that way for just bringing us back. Now, sometimes you'll hear elixirs referred to as yummy liquids that are herbal in general. But for our purposes, we're really talking about like a sweetened herbal preparation. And then a tonic has two pretty well-known working definitions that I think both are really, really relevant in terms of healing and nourishment. And the first one is that a tonic herb or food is something that fills us up. So in this culture that we're talking about that is just like deficient, tonic herbs in particular, or tonic foods such as broths, they fill us up with vitamins and minerals. So they can be, an herbal tonic could be something that's a tonic for the blood and for nourishment, but it could also be something like a heart tonic. And that's the second definition, which is tonic to a specific group of organs or tissue state. So if we have a heart tonic, it actually helps the heart function at the highest level. If we have an adrenal tonic, it helps the adrenals function at the highest level. So we can use these very specific foods and herbs to come in and help us heal specific organ systems. If we have a gut tonic, helps us absorb, it helps us soothe the lining of the gut. And when we get those two together, that amazing combination of actually like increasing the activity of the organ systems plus nourishment, then we get that really strong tonic action. And then broths, of course, are tonics. So you look at a broth, right, which is like it tones the gut automatically. And then based on what you actually bring in the broth, depending on the herbs and the foods, maybe it could be a lung tonic, maybe it could be a heart tonic, maybe it could be a nervous system tonic or a brain tonic. But the amazing thing is because we're tonifying the gut and having it work at this very high action, then we can actually get more of those goodies in. So in general, broths are all considered to be a tonic food, which is really amazing. One of the things that's really amazing about broths in general.
I love the root word of being toned or tonifying, almost like you're toning anything. Like if you're going to the gym and you're getting more toned, then that's like outward and obvious way of tonifying something. But inwardly, we don't see that. We don't see that. Whereas a tonic might help you get those into the best shape they could be in, and the equivalent of like you trying to work out or do some type of exercising to tonify the outside of your body, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I think the thing to note about tonics, just like with elixirs, there are so many ways that we can bring them in, right? Like we can take them as tinctures, we can get tonics in as broths, we can drink teas. Tonic teas are really wonderful and soothing. So it's the action that we're looking for to bring inside of the body to actually tone up those very specific organ systems.
So inherent in what you're saying, I was going to ask you this, but I think you've already kind of hinted at it. It's not that hard to make your own elixirs and tonics and broths. I mean, obviously we understand broths. People think they can probably make a chicken broth, but I think telling someone they can make their own elixirs sometimes might feel like a stretch for someone. Whereas you're saying, hey, these are things that we make that people have been making in their homes for thousands of years that are doable for anybody.
Yeah. Huge yes, not just a yeah. So one of the things that is like so important for me when I share medicine making is to just take off that sense of overwhelm and simplify it down. Because essentially, like you mentioned with broth, and sometimes people feel like they can make something like a chicken broth and sometimes not, we're really just putting ingredients into a solvent like water or alcohol or apple cider vinegar and bringing all the goodies out. And so to make medicine making more accessible, not because it's hard, but because we have a belief system that we've lost the ability to do it, and to be able to show people that really what we're just doing is putting it into the bottle. And before we know it, we have an amazing elixir, and it's really quite miraculous. And not only do we have an elixir that was very simple, that took us only moments to make, but we've all of a sudden also added something to a home medicine cabinet that is gentle, that is safe, that we can use consistently, that we made by ourselves. Like there's so much to it. And we do have a belief, I think, held in this culture because we've lost our connection to just being our own medicine makers, right? Like back in the day, everybody was their own medicine maker, and it was just part of daily living. And we have a belief that it's overwhelming or that it's hard to get things. So I like to demystify that and simplify that down into like, we actually can all make a lot of really basic, yummy medicines pretty simply.
You know how much of an impact your beet and nettle broth had on the entire film crew?
Oh,
Like I,
love that,
I'm
Rob.
not. It's so nuts. Like David, if you remember the second camera person, he's he had his wife was pregnant at the time, and they just gave birth after the filming of it. And I remember we were talking to him a lot because we needed the footage and talking about the editing and stuff. And he was just always drinking beet broth, and he like. I didn't say to him. No one said, "Hey, you should really try this." He just saw what you prepared, and then you gave us some, and also Mark, our DP, he said both. They've been making beet and nettle broth ever since. Like it's almost like the feeling that you get, and that's what these guys say too. But the feeling that you get when you drink it, it's kind of unlike anything else. Like you realize you are getting something that your body absolutely needs that you didn't know it needs, and obviously it tastes amazing. I guess my next question is, what makes broth so nourishing? What makes broth so nourishing? What's so nourishing about broth?
So much. And yes to beet and nettle broth, because beet and nettle broth, it's a great example of a broth that really is a tonic for so many organ systems. So like when you say people drink it and all of a sudden you feel better, imagine all of the places that all of those herbs and foods are going, which is really amazing. And broth in general, what makes it so amazing, first of all, it is simple. Once we really get comfortable with broth making, it's just about putting food and herbs in, but it's also this amazing straight shot of vitamins and minerals that we don't actually have to digest. So in this world right now where we're struggling with gut absorption and gut healing and gut inflammation and all of the other things that we're working with, we can get this medicine in that's delicious and a straight shot of nourishment right to all of the other organ systems that need it. And broth in general, regardless of which broth you make, and again, we can be very specific with herbs and foods, but broth in general is immune boosting. In general, it's anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antibacterial. It soothes the adrenals. There's all of these things that happen. A lot of people refer to broth, and I very much believe this as adaptogenic. So that way that it allows us to really manage stress more efficiently. Just like we would think of an adaptogenic herb. So broth in general, like it brings us back to having access to significant nourishment without having to digest it, without having to work hard, without having to lose any of the low kind of vital energy that we're working to raise up. Broth is that magic.
You make broths and elixirs for all of or many of your clients. Can we talk about some of the major needs they have health-wise that brings them to you, that you feel this medicine making is really beneficial for?
Yeah, so big picture needs, I would say that we are living in a state of a disrupted gut biome and a dysregulated nervous system. Big picture needs. It's very uncommon that when we look at other things like a skin condition or reproductive health or sleep issues, that we actually don't see the gut and the nervous system sitting right at the core of that. So always when I am making medicine, I'm thinking about these foundational healing knowings applications, taking us back again to that just core ancestral way of cooking and preparing medicine, which tells us that if we take care of the gut, if we soothe the lining of the gut, if we soothe the nervous system, if we boost the immune system, then we can actually get a bit more specialized in saying like, oh, let's add some heart herbs, right? But we also know that when we take medicines that soothe those core foundational centers, that we open up the body's ability to heal. So when I make medicine, that's always the foundation. I want to just soothe the gut. I want to soothe the nervous system. I want to boost the immune system. And then, it can be a little bit more specialized from there. After that, we might get specific about skin. We might get specific about liver or heart or happiness or pleasure for that matter. But we don't ever actually have access to that other wellness without those foundations being in place.
Is there one broth that you feel every one of us should be drinking, or is it mostly really specialized?
That's a great question. Okay, so the first answer would be whatever broth you're drinking is the perfect broth for you, because I really believe like if we were all drinking broth, we would be happier, healthier humans. So just getting broth in, and many times when people say like, what's one thing I can do? I can't do anything more than one thing. It's broth, and whatever broth works for you. And then I have a double answer, I think. So this one that I have, which I love, is the basic vegan broth. One of the reasons I love it is because, I've got 50 herbs in my apothecary. This is like a grocery store broth. You don't have to order or buy, and you probably have a lot of this in your cupboard and on your counter and in your fridge. I have like a deep love of that simplification of like, and it has all of those actions, those anti-inflammatory, immune boosting. And then, of course, the beet and nettle broth, because I co-created that with my dad, and because it gets to so many organ systems and it's so delicious and people all over the world drink it. And it's incredibly special. And the beet and nettle broth, as you know, has a lot more ingredients, right? It's got all of these other things that as you move into more advanced broth making, even though it's still simple, that you would feel like you have access to. So I guess that was a 3-part I love broth. I love lots of broth recipe answer.
Can we talk about the some tips and tricks for making this medicine on the cheap? I think that there is sort of preconception that all these things cost money. I mean, if you go to Whole Foods or you go to any of the major health food stores and you go into the tincture or like the elixir areas, it's expensive stuff. I mean, this is not a cheap path for most people. But you, during the filming, were kind of giving us some tips on the side about how you can do this and not only make it cost effective, but also make it part of a really sustainable household.
Yeah. This is huge with broth and medicine making. And this isn't something I created. This is just coming back to ancestral ways. Which, for many of us, that is the way, and we find the healing. And with broth making, with elixir making, I'll use broth as an example. Traditionally, our ancestors made broth regularly by using the scraps of their dinner, of their cooking, of their herbs, at that time, most likely wildcrafting, but maybe gardening, and just tossing it into a pot and simmering it and straining it. And so I've really adopted and begun teaching that practice of like, if you're cooking, save all of your veggie scraps. If you made something and you do eat meat and there are bones or residual meat scraps, save that. When you've harvested herbs from your garden, or say you bought herbs and there's a bunch of stems, save that. Because ultimately that would have gone into the trash or the compost, which would even be better. But where it can go is right into your broth pot, and it makes a delicious broth. Better for finances, better for the earth, like better for you in terms of your time and well-being. You don't have to re-chop a bunch of new things. And I do make broths from like new things also. Mm-hmm. But also the amazing thing about broth, you can have old veggies or old potatoes or old carrots, not moldy, but that have been sitting in your fridge or on your counter, and that's perfect use for them. Like you may be done with them in terms of other food prep, but they're perfect for broth. So again, it's just incredibly sustainable. And then, with making other medicines, really having the ability to just, even if you went and bought the herb from the apothecary, or if you grew the herb, any or all of those are great, you can make a medicine for a couple of bucks. And it is potent, and you know what it is. You can make it all organic if you desire that. And you end up with something that costs you $5 and that fills your home medicine cabinet, and you can use it in the right season for the specific part of your body that needs support. And it's pretty amazing.
I remember being blown away when you were explaining the mineral density of potatoes, because I was growing up, I grew up in an Italian and Irish family, but the people who cooked were were Italian. And I think that there's always this belief that potatoes were really filling, but they weren't really necessarily like this new soup, the superfood that you should be considering. But I was blown away by what you told us about the nutrient density of even just common potatoes, not like fancy sweet potatoes or yams, but just regular potatoes. Can we talk about some other ingredients that might have nutrient density that you wouldn't expect? Other ingredients that sort of have a level of nutrition that don't seem to get a lot of credit for having all that. Because I think that a lot of folks who are listening are on a plant-based diet. I'd say probably half the people, and it's cool for them to know that there's a way to get a really mineral dense broth without having to throw bones in there. Obviously, there's certain things that bones will give you, but there's a lot of things that vegetables and roots can give you as well.
Yeah, so true. And I think, you bring up something really important in terms of being on a plant-based diet. And I grew up vegetarian, and I know this well, and working with my dad and his body, that we have to be really deliberate. And I do eat meat now, but in a plant-based world, we have to be really deliberate about getting in minerals and being able to absorb minerals. So the amazing thing about almost anything that we add to a broth, I often think of the core ingredients as onion, celery, carrot, and some basic herbs. Now, you could throw that together and you would have a broth that would be really, really rich in vitamins and minerals, because anytime we put our vegetables into water and simmer at the right temperature, we get to bring all of those out and it's into the liquid. But as soon as we add other vegetables, we get this really wonderful nutrient diversity. So we can add root veggies, and depending on how much of those you like or what you use, you actually get some good carbohydrates in a broth, which is not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing. It becomes kind of more of a meal. It's more balanced. In a vegan broth, we always want to add a healthy oil. So my favorite is coconut oil. Sometimes I add olive oil. Sometimes I add avocado oil. But when we are sure to add that oil, then we can ensure that we are going to absorb the minerals, because we need fat-soluble vitamins and fats to actually absorb our minerals. So one of the biggest mistakes in broth making ingredients and recipes is making a vegan broth with no added fat. Then we actually don't absorb all those goodies. So even those basic ingredients, right? Just a few vegetables, a root vegetable, some bay leaves. I love to add garlic and ginger in general. I love to add turmeric in general. But adding that fat and adding a couple of root veggies, all of a sudden you have a pretty wonderful, nutrient-rich and nutrient-diverse broth.
Can you talk about ferments for a second, and can you explain where ferments go in this categorization? Is that also a tonic because it's tonifying a certain part of your in?
Yeah, I would say ferments for sure are a tonic, and I would call them a gut and immune system tonic. So, right, if we think about they're a tonic also in terms of being nutrient dense and filling us up. They're really full of vitamins and minerals and lots of enzymes, but they're also a gut tonic because they help to tone the lining of the gut. They help to populate the lining of the gut and the microbiome. So in general, we would call ferments a tonic, but I would also, really think about them as this immune tonic action in general, right? This probiotic action. And this reminds us about that relationship between the immune system and the gut. When we have that healthy microbiome and we're getting in the right probiotics, our immune capacity just shoots up. So ferments are amazing for that. Ferments also, it's one of those things that we want to use ferments and work with ferments with other foods in a way that we can actually have access to the nutrients. So we don't need to be overusing ferments. We've got a little bit of a theme right now of overeating sauerkraut or over drinking kombucha. A little goes a long way. And they're so easy and simple to make at home. So a little goes a long way, like a lot of our other remedies. And they're incredibly tonifying, incredibly nourishing.
Do you make kombuchas for your clients as well?
I don't. But I share kombuchas with a lot of clients, like in session, like having broth ready or having kombucha ready or tea ready.
Yeah. What is the elixir of immortality?
Ooh, the elixir of immortality, one of my favorites. So we're really talking about reishi mushroom. And reishi is one of our functional or medicinal mushrooms. And reishi is a phenomenal chi tonic. So when we talk about a chi tonic, we're really talking about a tonic that both supports the gut. It's not even both, it's the gut, the nervous system, and the immune system, and essentially brings up our energy or our chi. So back to that thing we were talking about before, which is when we can take care of the immune system, the gut, and the nervous system, we're going to have a sense of well-being and energy. And reishi is just really prized and known as this really potent chi tonic. And when we work with reishi, for me in particular, I have almost an immediate sense of well-being, which is also why reishi goes into that adaptogenic category of knowing that.
The fuck? Okay. I don't know what just happened. It just went all the way to the end. And it just stopped. So I'm going to wait a little while and see if it comes back on. And if not, I'll refresh the page. But so far, it's pretty good information. Of course, well, not of course, but I already know about the tonics of immortality, which is funny because I've never really looked or heard of anybody talking specifically about tonics of immortality. Now, reishi mushrooms is not one of the ingredients I'm familiar with, but I am familiar with the elixirs of immortality that are made with Chinese tonic herbs. Actually, they're elixirs, and they're made with Chinese tonic herbs, which you can take alone. But as she said, you also add like a coconut oil or something that adds fat, and then you might add vegetables. See, this is different from just a regular herbal tonic. When you add these other ingredients, then it becomes an elixir. So I want to do videos about all of that. But again, I don't know what's happening. I'm looking at her frozen, and I don't know.
When we have that healthy microbiome and we're getting in the right probiotics, our immune capacity just shoots up. So ferments are amazing for that. Ferments also, you know, it's one of those things that we want to use ferments and work with ferments with other foods in a way that we can actually have access to the nutrients. So we don't need to be overusing ferments. We've got a little bit of a theme right now of overeating sauerkraut or over drinking kombucha. A little goes a long way. And they're so easy and simple to make at home. So a little goes a long way, like a lot of our other remedies. And they're incredibly tonifying, incredibly nourishing.
Do you make kombuchas for your clients as well?
I don't. But I share kombuchas with a lot of clients, like in session, like having broth ready or having kombucha ready or tea ready.
Yeah. What is the elixir of immortality?
Ooh, the elixir of immortality, one of my favorites. So we're really talking about reishi mushroom. And reishi is one of our functional or medicinal mushrooms. And reishi is a phenomenal chi tonic. So when we talk about a chi tonic, we're really talking about a tonic that both supports the gut. It's not even both, it's the gut, the nervous system, and the immune system, and essentially brings up our energy or our chi. So back to that thing we were talking about before, which is when we can take care of the immune system, the gut, and the nervous system, we're going to have a sense of well-being and energy. And reishi is just really prized and known as this really potent chi tonic. And when we work with reishi, for me in particular, I have almost an immediate sense of well-being, which is also why reishi goes into that adaptogenic category of knowing that, oh, all of a sudden I have an increased capacity to manage and hold stress. Like my nervous system capacity expanded, and reishi leaves us with that feeling. Reishi also is really wonderful at helping us heal the microbiome. Reishi is incredibly calming. Reishi can help with sleep. And there is research behind reishi that tells us of how many different organ systems that it's actually a tonic for. So that makes sense that we would call it the elixir of immortality, because when all of our organ systems are functioning at a high level, we're going to feel good and live for a long time. Like we're bringing that overall vital life force and chi up. So I love reishi in a lot of ways. I put reishi in broth. I love reishi as a tincture. I use reishi often. Like in here, I have a cacao herbal elixir that also has a reishi powder and some other mushroom powders.
Ooh.
Add reishi into things like in a powdered form. And it's just absolutely divine and so healing.
Are there other herbs that find their way into a lot of your elixirs that are your favorites?
Mm. Cacao, I love. Speaking of elixirs, right? Because I have a deep love of healthy sweet things. So I love to have something really yummy, sweetened with a date, like what's in there right now. Cacao is great for me because I don't drink other caffeine. So it's very uplifting and heart opening, but I don't get the negative kidney and adrenal effects of caffeine. But other things I use all the time, are things like nettle in broth and tea. You know, we love nettle. I know you love nettle also. Lion's mane I use really often in elixirs. Rose is one of my very favorite tonic herbs. Also, I work a lot with this idea of bringing on the parasympathetic in the body, right? And how we return to a sense of joy or the feminine sense of well-being. And rose is really my favorite remedy for that. So you'll see a lot of those in things that I make. You'll see a lot of those remedies very often.
Of your equation is also, while nourishing yourself, overnourishing yourself, doing less.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Yeah. This is deep, and we could talk about this for like 2 months. So I'm going to do my best to summarize it. I always say we didn't get to this place in this culture by doing more and nourishing less. And so I am always inviting myself, I'm always inviting others to do less and nourish more. And that really informs even things like cooking, right? Sometimes cooking could feel overwhelming. When we move it into the category of this is to bring deep nourishment to me or to me and my family, it's nourishing more. All of the extra things that we are doing that pull us out of a state of nervous system wellness or pull us into a sympathetic activated state where we are fight or flight versus a parasympathetic do less, nourish more, rest, digest, heal, receive, that allows us to move into a healing frequency. The human body heals in the parasympathetic state. So when we do less and we nourish more, we allow the body to go into the ability, like turning on a switch, the ability to start healing. And as soon as we do that, then the body starts using the herbs, then the body starts using the food, and all of a sudden this innate ability to heal, which we all have, is turned on.
So to unpack that a little bit more, at the risk of going for 3 hours on this one topic,
yeah, or 3 weeks.
But so people have busy lives and they have to work and they have bills to pay, and some of us have kids that are running around and a dog that barks too much. And you say do less. I don't think you're necessarily saying, don't work as much. Are you saying more like when you get home from work, you don't need to, turn on Netflix or doom scroll or whatever you might do, get sucked into the most crazy Instagram video chain of things? Maybe doing less is like being peaceful. And I'm putting words in your mouth, so I'm going to stop. But is that kind of what you're sort of
yes,
about?
Yes, as part of it. Absolutely, yes, as part of it. I think there's a big group of things that you just referenced that are the opposite of nourishment, and they lead to a feeling of being deficient and depleted. So, from that perspective, we can always ask the question, is this nourishing me, or what do I need right now to be fully nourished? One of my favorite questions for myself and clients. What do I need right now to be fully nourished? So, that doesn't mean that it's not a hike, which would be doing something, right? It also doesn't
Right.
mean that it's not laying on your bed, like me on my infrared mat with my eyes closed, breathing deeply. That's a great way for me to be doing less. But there's also a way in which, and again, without getting into the weeds, for me and my work, I love my work. It fills me up, and it requires a tremendous amount of commitment and focus. Now, I can bring commitment and focus from a fully nourished, vibrant self that comes from desire and love, or I can come from deficiency, stress, fear, right? Those are two totally different nervous system and gut states. And so I'm always holding the intention that when I am doing, because doing is a very special part of being a human, I wouldn't want to do this life without doing and doing my work and doing things for my children, to be able to do it from fullness and nourishment. And that requires that we commit to fullness and nourishment. In that place, we can have an expanded nervous system state. I find for myself in fullness, I'm pretty capable of doing a lot of things and not being run down or deficient. I'm not able to do that when nourishment is not my foundation.
You're saying that, I was also thinking, about sleep. Like, sleep is something that we cut short. We don't really want to do that. Some people would make the argument that they only need 5 hours of sleep, which is nuts. And I think that nourishment is the same. It goes the same way. And I know that you're a I don't want to call you a master of sleep, but you do make a lot of elixirs, and I have your hops tincture here at the ready at all times. Can we talk about sleep a little bit?
Yeah, sleep is just a form of nourishment, just like community and love, right? And we as humans, the more nourished we are, overall nourishment, the happier and healthier and well we are, the more we're being fully expressed. So sleep is in that foundational place. And it's greatly affected by a well gut or a well nervous system, or an unwell gut and unwell nervous system. And it's one of those loops, which is like, if you're not getting sleep, it can be quite hard to heal those other things, and vice versa. So if we think of sleep as this core time where we actually have the ability to translate nourishment into health, right? It's one of these ways that all the work we did to bring in nourishment in the day moves into our cells, and we get to translate it. Sleep is so critical because it's a translation time. Think about our children. If they don't sleep, they're not growing very well, and they're grumpy and they're unhappy, and they're not going to have a good appetite. So sleep is a translation time physically and, in our subconscious. And it's critical. And without it, it's almost impossible to turn on that parasympathetic state of healing. Almost impossible. It can be very, very difficult.
You already touched on this, but I kind of want to underline it because it's so vital, because many people are suffering right now. The idea of nourishment a lot of times probably gets more associated with the physical body, and maybe less with our mental and emotional functioning. But I know that you are a strong advocate for nourishment as a means to alleviate cognitive and emotional challenges like stress, anxiety, depression, overwhelm. Can you talk about that a little more? You touched on it, but could you talk about how that is actually like a square one for those types of health challenges?
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of times this is the core of my work. People may come in for something else, and what we actually discover is, like, not only do they not have nourishment, but they're really not happy. These things go hand in hand. And when we don't have what we need, body, mind, or spirit, the body is in a state of sympathetic fight, flight. We're in a state of things are not safe. And so over time, what that translates to is communication from our very wise body that communicates so well with us that says, I'm not okay, or I'm deeply afraid. So think of like depression, anxiety. It's like the body is screaming, I don't feel right. Every day, I don't feel right. And that experience over a long period of time is a relationship to mental health, right? If I don't feel right every day and my body tells me every day that I'm afraid and that I don't feel good because I don't have my core needs met, then it's very difficult to feel a sense of well-being. And one of the things that we can do when there are mental health things on the horizon, and for a good majority of people, even quite well people, there's mental health concerns that are present, is we can move into a state of nourishment or metabolic safety. And when we move into a state of nourishment or metabolic safety, and the body has a felt sense of I have what I need, then from safety, we can actually heal other types of non-safety. Like maybe those things came from traumas or experiences that also give our body a sense constantly of I'm not safe, I'm not safe. It's almost impossible if we have a repeated daily feeling of I don't have what I need to be able to heal those other things. So food as medicine is core for healing trauma, for healing any other mental health imbalance, and for bringing us into like sustainable well-being in terms of mood and in terms of mental health.
What is your take? And I don't mean this as a curveball in any way, but it seems like I know you have a take on it. So what is your take on fasting? Because fasting almost feels like the opposite of nourishment.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of like an elasticity there that you appreciate? Like the idea of, hey, nourish, 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 don't nourish, and like, but don't do some weird thing in the middle. Why am I putting words in your mouth? How do you feel about fasting?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I believe that there is an absolute place for fasting. And I believe that there's research behind the incredible health benefits of fasting. Now, we also know that female bodies and male bodies fast differently. And the male body is not set up on the same hormonal cycle that the female body is, and that the female body fasts differently in different times of her monthly cycle or life cycle. So that piece is one of the things that I always push back about in this culture. Let's be clear who we're talking about, where we are in our life cycle and our monthly cycle, or even you in a male body. If you've been sick for the last month, I'll be darned if I would tell you to fast, right? I think that's a really bad idea. Now, in Native cultures, where fasting is part of the tradition, those folks come in from a well-nourished state. And there are a lot of benefits we can receive from a lot of practices when we come in from a well-nourished state. So from a well-nourished state, to be able to open up and take this significant break from the need to digest physically and emotionally, because fasting gives us a big break physically and emotionally, that boosts our ability to heal. If we come in from deficiency and we fast and we're starting to break down tissues,
right,
not improving. So my real answer is it depends on the body. It depends on how you're coming in, and the big picture belief that we can gain a lot as human beings from many challenges, including fasting, when we are well nourished. Just like things that come into our lives, we're able to traverse them. If we have a kiddo that gets sick, or if we have to miss meals for a whole day because something bad happened, if we're well, we can handle that. If we're not well, that may hit us so hard and so long. So those are the things that I really note. The other thing with intermittent fasting is, especially with women, we have to be really thoughtful about where she is. If she's in a place where there's hormonal imbalance, it's really unsafe. There's some other times where it can be incredibly supportive and useful. So I always like to look at that more about the individual. And in general, well men can fast really well. And if you think about ancestrally, you might have been going out on a hunt and not eating until the night when you had completed that, and you physiologically are set up for that. And the female body was set up differently, so it doesn't often work as well.
Thank you for that wisdom drop. We have a little more time left. I have two more questions for you. One is, you kind of mentioned it before, but in terms of mineral density and overall wellness, what are your favorite fats?
Mineral density and overall wellness. So I like to be really careful about not overdoing these kind of polyunsaturated fats, which I think we really overdo, even though they're healthy fats. And those are fats that you find in things like nuts and seeds. we should be eating nuts and seeds. But if we go back to our ancestors, it was not a cup a day. It was like maybe a handful if you were lucky, and then you could benefit. So, you know, in native cultures where they do eat a lot of fat, think about things like avocado, think about coconut, think about olives, right? Those are fats that culturally were actually eaten and consumed at a high level and created more health. So I like to be very deliberate about that. And those are my favorites in general.
Very cool. I love that it's got almost like a, not really, but it's got almost like a Weston Price, like investigating like the indigenous cultures and what they do. And obviously that seems like a pretty clean way of going about it. Why do you start with the gut? It seems like most of what you're doing is working first with the gut. And I mean, I think I have an idea of why, but I mean, I would love to hear what your process is. You work with the gut and then outward from there.
Yes. So I always like to say gut first or gut and. So notice that the gut is with it. No matter where we start, the gut is involved. And gut first, the perspective is this: to get any of these goodies in, it has to go through my gut. So I can make the most wonderful, nourishing elixir in the world, and if my gut is not functioning, I'm not getting it on a cellular level. So we have to be able to have functioning in the gut, the ability to absorb, the ability to digest, to be able to get in amazing plant medicines and amazing foods. So for food as medicine to serve us, the gut has to be functioning. For our mental health, the gut has to be functioning. For our immune health, the gut has to be functioning. For overall nervous system health, the gut has to be functioning. And when I say the gut and, I usually say gut and nervous system. So that relationship, if the nervous system is really stuck in a sympathetic state, we shut down the ability for the gut to do its job. So if we're sympathetic and we're in fight or flight, we're not in rest, digest, heal, absorb. And so sometimes the key to the gut is actually through gut and nervous system together. But when we think of the gut and the nervous system as this amazing portal to all parts of us, this is how we interact with the world. All things go through the gut and nervous system. And when we're interacting with a toned gut and a toned nervous system, we're absorbing, we're receiving, we're translating into nourishment and growth. And when we're not, it's almost like the gate is up and all the things we do are just stuck at the gate. And so it can be a little bit of a spinning wheel, which we see a lot in this culture. Everybody's trying to do something, but we're in a deeply activated nervous system or a shut down, non-absorbing gut. And all of those intentions or all of those resources just don't go anywhere.
Do you feel like the majority, or at least a large percentage of the people who come to you for help are suffering from some type of gut imbalance that you're helping to correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to say, me included, and I think I'm really well. This culture, it's kind of part of it. You know, we just accept where we are in our human relationship to this world right now. It's more stressful and less nourishing than it should be in terms of what our physiology is designed for. But it's rare. I don't know if I've even met somebody as a client or just in the world that isn't working on gut and nervous system healing in general to stay well, to stay balanced. You know, we're not getting all of those foods that we used to get, all those probiotic foods and those fermented foods, and we're not getting the minerals from the ground in the same way. So it's harder work than it may have been in the past. Woo, I know.
Man, we are out of time here, ladies and gentlemen. That was amazing. I hope everyone listening took a ton of notes. We just covered a lot. Can we, before we go, dive into this amazing new course that we are creating with you called Healing Tonics and Elixirs?
Yes, I'm so excited. And just a big picture about this course, what is so amazing about it is bringing all of these medicines back into the home in a way that's really accessible and simple and doable. And so for me, in my own healing and everything that I offer, I want things to feel less like overwhelm or less like doing and more like nourishment. So that really guides this course. And we are going to lean into the opportunity to make recipes together, elixirs, tonics, tinctures, teas, so many broths. And I think I'll just share a little bit about each week to give everybody a sense of what we will create together. So in the first class, we will start with our general overview. If you know me, and we've been talking about this, I believe in building foundations. So this will be our foundational class, and we will be talking about the gut, the immune system, really the nervous system, the relationship to the whole body, healing, nourishment, and modulating inflammation. And we'll also make our first broth recipe together, which is this wonderful liquid gold, I often call it, the basic broth. And in our next class, class 2, we will start our journey through continuing with herbs and continuing with the seasons, and we will be working with winter and the immune system and the nervous system and how to build your home medicine cabinet specifically in that season, knowing that winter is also in the human body, it's illness. So how to work with illness, how do we really boost the immune system, heal the gut, and boost the immune system at the same time. And we will be making the deep immune broth and the first elixir, which is elderberry syrup, one of my absolute favorite elixirs, sweetened with raw honey. I know, it's so good. In the next class, we will be leaning into detoxing and clearing toxicity gently and safely, and really moving into what does it look like to gently and safely clean the liver and gallbladder, and what does it mean to be in spring, that time that we're really clearing gunk out physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And we'll make a nutritive detox broth and also a dandelion root and dandelion leaf elixir, which is so yummy and so fun. And you can also learn how to wildcraft that, because dandelions are one of the things that we can find all over the place. In week 4, we're going to be talking about caring for the heart and the pericardium, physically and emotionally. So continuing with our herbs each time, we're going to be really learning additional herbs for the heart and how to take care of bringing on a sense of joy. And we'll make a heart healing elixir and a magic mineral heart healing broth. Both of those are some of my favorites and absolutely delicious. And then in week 5, we're going to be moving into the lungs and the large intestine. And what does it mean to let go? Which is actually a bit different than detoxing. What does it mean to let go and to move into a new place? And it's also related to fall or autumn. And we'll make the nourishing tonic broth and also a lung and gut oxymel. And an oxymel is an herbal preparation with apple cider vinegar and honey. And it is so, so, so delicious. And then in week 6, we are going to be bringing it all together in some advanced medicine making. And when I say advanced, just know it's still going to feel simple, but we're going to bring all the things together, all of these amazing herbs that we have been learning, and start to combine them so that you have a sense of like, you can combine herbs. And I still combine things that I don't necessarily love. That's okay and perfect. We're going to start that process of integrating our amazing medicine making and learning into your real life, because when the course is over, I want you to be able to feel like you can make medicine. So we are going to make the gut healing tonic oxymel, which is so delicious, and the gut tonic tea blend. We'll blend the tea together, and then a delicious cacao elixir, which can be made as a smoothie or a milkshake or like a hot cocoa drink, which is really delicious. So I know, so good. And then in week 7, we are going to bring it all together and really start working with, okay, great, Mitten, we did all this medicine making together. We've been making broth, drinking broth. We made all of these beautiful potions and elixirs. We have them in our cabinet. How do I then go into the world and make decisions about how do I use what and when? What season of my body, my life, my illness, my gut, my immune system can be matched to those individual medicines? And we'll also talk through the different phases of healing. So phase 1, for instance, it's do nothing. So a lot more of do nothing. And the higher phases, we actually have medical intervention. And we want to be really spending a lot of time in the center and learning how to invest in those center phases of healing. That's how we stay well. And then the medicine woman cycle of transformation. So we want to learn how to transform for sustainable wellness. We don't want just short-term learning or short-term healing. We want long-term transformation and healing. And then that amazing course would be complete.
This is going to be incredible. I've got like tingles just thinking about it. It's going to be so cool. Everyone I know is going to want to take this course. You guys, below the video, you will see a full page that's dropped down that has all the details of what's in this awesome course, including the pricing, what's in each class, and also for everyone who is listening right now, if you enroll in the next few days, you will get 25% off of the tuition, plus a bunch of awesome bonuses. Can we talk about the bonuses?
Yes, these bonuses are really, really fun. So I always like to say, offer that which you wish you would receive. I always would have loved to receive these. So the first one is a materia medica of all of the herbs that we are going to learn together. So in our time together, it would be impossible for me to tell you all of the amazing herbal actions and uses for each of these beautiful herbs. And we're really focusing in on gut healing and immune healing. So in the materia medica, you will have a full description of each herb, parts used, actions, uses, and materia medica really means a body of knowledge specifically about plant medicine. So it will be a booklet of easy to read herbal actions and uses so that beyond what we learn together, you have access to knowledge on how to continue to use these herbs for all the things we didn't even get to in the course. And the second one is the Create Your Own Broth Garden ebook, which was really a delight to create and came from all of my work growing a broth garden with my dad and my own broth garden, which is more of an herbal broth garden, and his is very much a food broth garden. But it will walk you through, for any of you that desire to do any of your own growing and creating, even if you're just thinking about it, what you can grow, how you can use it, how you can store it, broth making recipes, storing broth, storing herbs, storing vegetables so that you can be in that sustainable way of living. And really from seed to like midwinter broth drinking, have your own broth. And even if you're not growing it, there's so much in there that you can use in terms of broth storage and preparation and storing scraps, etc., which is really nice. And then we have the Medicine Woman Smoothie book, which is really a collection of herbal elixirs, right? It's food as medicine with a lot of healing herbs. All of the recipes in there are gut soothing. All of the recipes are anti-inflammatory and immune boosting in this very easy to digest, delicious way. Lots of them have cacao. Many of them have things like pumpkin or sweet potato, our functional mushrooms that we've been talking about, things like gelatin or collagen if you use that, and really simple recipes so you can learn the foundation of this really easy, simple medicine making where you're not just getting something that's hard to digest or empty, but really deep nutrition in what you're taking on the go.
If you haven't taken one of our workshops, it's kind of the coolest thing that we do. We put every bit of effort we have into these to make them truly special experiences for all of our students. You get weekly classes, you have additional handouts, you have a dynamic student portal where all of your materials are held that you log into, and you have access to this for life. So every class, once it airs each week, it goes into that portal and it stays there for life. So you can go at your own pace. You don't need to be concerned about, I'm going away, in 2 or 3 weeks, so am I going to be able to make this class? This is going to be here for you for life. Plus, you have a really cool Facebook private group that you can join and interact with other students. We find a lot of the time that questions that are being asked will be answered by other students because there's a lot of masters in this community. Obviously, Mitten will be in there as well, but you'll just find so much support in that group. It's one of the favorite things that we hear about all the time, that our students come back and say, wow, like that group was like a big online family. So this is a truly special experience that we take a lot of pride in putting forward. After watching Mitten's interview, like honestly, half my friends were making broths and wondering how they can make more broths, which is why we are presenting this to you today. So if you benefited from this webinar, if you watched the Healing Kitchen, if you are someone who just knows you need more nourishment, who wants to get more engaged with the food you eat, with the plant world around you, this is something that you don't want to miss. It is honestly going to be potentially, maybe the coolest thing we've ever released. Mitten, thank you so much for being with us. Everybody, scroll down and check out what we have here. Mitten, do you have anything else to say?
First of all, thank you. I always love the opportunity to talk broth and elixirs and tonics. And I think I'm just excited to continue bringing this out into the world. I'm excited to offer this type of medicine. And yeah, this invitation, do less and nourish more. Drink broth. That's the invitation. If you take something from our time together today, do less, nourish more, drink broth. You'll feel better.
I need that t-shirt. Do you have a t-shirt?
I want that t-shirt. To make the t-shirt.
Thank you for hanging out today. And guys, please join us. It's going to be a truly transformative experience. Until next time.
Okay, so I hope y'all took some notes. I don't know if they're going to rebroadcast this, but I will try to remember to put the link down below. But for right now, LA is burning up and I live in LA, so I'm going to make me some food and nutrition and tonics and stuff. I'm out. Peace.